Yeah, thank you, Ramin, for the kind introduction, and welcome everybody to this webinar. Thank you for your interest and for taking your time to join us today. I assume that some of you know Softing and our products, but not all of you. So it's my turn here to begin this webinar with a quick overview about the company, our connectivity products, a few more comments on the benefits of containerized machine connectivity in particular, and then a last slide on the product we are going to see in the demo later in the webinar, our so-called edgeConnector Siemens. For those who know Softing and our products, please be patient for maybe around 10 minutes before I hand over to my colleagues. Softing is a German company headquartered near Munich, around 400 people in total, and we, the group you talked to today, represent the Softing Industrial Business Unit. Softing Industrial exists in about 40 years, develops and markets products which are used in automation networks. We are specialists for industrial communication. And we can distinguish here between market segments, traditional business where we sell assets into automation networks. We have stacks, boards that we sell to device manufacturers or maybe software vendors. And we have products that we sell into more innovative solution scenarios. I'll speak about the distinction between automation networks and IoT, what we mean here, in a second. So what do the relevant products do? Essentially, they are all doing similar things. Here in this diagram at the left-hand side, so you see here logos for devices that you typically find in automation networks. Siemens Rockwell PLCs, CNC machines, a range of PLCs that can be accessed, for example, via Modbus, or we enable direct access to sensors and actors. So we know how to unlock data from these devices in brownfield projects. If they're a bit older, usually non-standardized interfaces, proprietary ones, we understand how to access those and how to make here data from automation networks, machine data, process data available to applications, shown here at the right-hand side. Traditional, these applications on-prem, a basic HMI system, or maybe just writing data into a database for archiving purposes. More innovative solution scenarios may be deployed on a cloud platform. We now see quite a few projects where there is a mix between those deployment scenarios. And in the center, we have Softing products. At the bottom, you see here small images, hardware products, the so-called UA gate product family, DIN rail mounting. We have connectivity products that can be deployed as Windows application, flagship product here, the data feed OPC suite. And now, a few years ago, we started to develop and to make commercially available containerized machine connectivity products. I assume you know Docker as a term here, so-called edgeConnector product family and edge aggregator. Now, the good question is, which product is good for me? And we have these discussion and pre-sale situations quite a lot with our customers. As said, functionally, they're all similar. The real difference is the solution context and the way how those products are managed or operated. And the next slide is painting here maybe a bit black and white. The differences here. A traditional solution scenario can be characterized as, well, the customer's looking for an application for one facility only. It's one application, and it's most likely going to be stable for years to come. So minimal maintenance efforts are critical. Ideally, the connectivity component doesn't even has to be touched for years to come. That's what we like to call site autonomy for machine connectivity, where in many cases a hardware product does the job, or maybe also the Windows application here on a standard IPC. As opposed to that, when you look at these newer solution scenarios, which can be summarized by the term IoT, we see clearly different boundary conditions and requirements for machine connectivity. First, It's not usually just one application, but quite a few that need to be connected. The customer may not know today which one to add in 2 years. Maybe there's an application with uncertain ROI that needs to be switched off after a while. So it's a much more volatile application or solution context, which means that also machine connectivity has to be reconfigured and changed over the life cycle of the solution. A cloud platform often plays a role. An application shall be reused across multiple production sites, and customers look at ways how to manage also machine connectivity centrally. Basically, use IT-driven operating concepts that are in place for a so-called edge level, and leverage those operating concepts also for machine connectivity. We like to call this solution scenario industrial edge. When new technical requirements arise, like the availability of APIs for easy third-party integration, remote configuration, or containerization capability to manage here such a software module with standard software for containerized software as such. So that's the, let's say, the way how to differentiate your hardware products, Windows applications, and the containerized offering. Benefits here, to summarize that on one slide, for containerized machine connectivity. Again, it depends on the solution context, so it's not generally better. It really is a question of solution and operating and organizational around. But yeah, the potential benefits of machine connectivity summarized here. Deployed on standard hardware, in some cases even the possibility to save an extra hardware layer, just reuse what there is in place for edge anyway. You can leverage your IT-driven management processes, concepts also for machine connectivity, leading overall to better scalability and more efficient operations for the entire solutions throughout the life cycle. Now let's take a closer look at the product we're going to see here in a minute in particular. It's the so-called edgeConnector Siemens. Yeah, we have more versions, more variants here in the edgeConnector product family. There's an edgeConnector 840D for CNC machines, edgeConnector Modbus. We will release an edgeConnector FANUC shortly. And we started to work on edgeConnector for everything that's Rockwell Allen Bradley, which should come out towards the end of this year. So we have to pick one example for this webinar, and we decided to go for edgeConnector Siemens, which connects, as the name suggests here, Siemens S7 PLCs, also the older versions. One instance can connect up to 20 PLCs. You have a graphical user interface built into, but also REST API for third-party integration, reconfiguration remotely of the product. And it supports, as the diagram shows here, OPC-UA and MQTT for northbound communication, be it maybe with an MQTT broker on edge level, or via OPC-UA to a cloud connector, or maybe also MQTT directly to a cloud, which is not shown here. Anything else I'd like to explain? As said, integration into IT environments is relevant. It begins with containerization as such. You could use Kubernetes-based platforms. Cloud portals now usually offer ways how to manage net level, or you pick Portainer, which we believe is in particular interesting here for users working at the interface between OT, IT. Tobias will explain in a minute a bit more exactly the advantages. We have a partnership with Portainer. We featured Portainer and an end demo, for example, at the Hanover Fair, HMI Fair a few months ago. So with that, well, one slide for those who maybe are new to softing. Of course, this was just a super short overview, maybe a good entry point. If you're interested in the topic, please navigate to our webpage. There is a section expertise. Underneath expertise, you find a chapter edge computing, and this should be a good starting point for everything I briefly summarized today and we discussed today. With that, Tobias, let me hand over to you.
Thank you, Christopher. Basically, when we're talking about Portainer, we will have two different parts which I will cover. So basically, first of all, the main part kind of some theoretical slides to elaborate on the advantages that we have identified together with Softlink software. And then afterwards, we will have a live demo from Anthony showing especially the edgeConnector Siemens that Christopher was referring to in action using Portainer and the corresponding deployment methods. When it comes to the trends in the OT-IT segment and in the interface between OT and operation technology and IT, we and also, of course, market analysts have identified several trends. For instance, IT-based containerization technology at the edge, the integration of IT and OT tools as a second trend, and number 5 is also very interesting, even containerizing PLC programs at the edge infrastructure. And this is not a coincidence. This is based especially on the fact that containerization supports agile development cycles, especially for software suppliers, of course, and for the end customer, it's then easier to roll out the applications also at scale. But with this trend, and also having in mind the challenges of the OT infrastructure, it's and also the corresponding staff that is working there, you need a dedicated tooling and a simple tool to kind of leverage the advantages without having to hire dedicated IT staff. And that's the role of Portainer here. Portainer is kind of a centralized container management platform that can deploy containerized software on the cloud, on-premise, so for instance in large data centers, and also on the edge, so for example on small industrial PCs, also located in an electrical cabinet, for instance. And the main message here is also that we are not catching our customers in a so-called vendor login. So our customers are free to choose the corresponding technology. So for instance, they can use Docker underneath, Docker Swarm, Podman, Nomad, and also Kubernetes. And this can be such an application can be, for instance, the edgeConnector Siemens that we will see in the live demo. Just a couple of advantages when customers are using Portainer inside their industrial IoT projects. When we designed Portainer, we focused on 3 different focus topics, and these are basically speed, simplicity, and IT security. So when it comes to speed, we want, of course, to avoid that our customers are spending too much time on recurring tasks. For instance, we have implemented a process, so-called one-touch onboarding, which makes it very, very easy to onboard new industrial PCs, for instance, into your existing IT infrastructure. Then also simplicity, of course. Our well-designed UI supports also non-IT experts. So for instance, we call them OT experts during their day-to-day business. And when it comes to IT security, very important, especially when we have a look at the OT networks and their nature, that they are, of course, also sometimes very old and needs to be updated several times. Not every customer wants to have, for instance, cloud connectivity. And so we are supporting air-gapped installations and also providing role-based access control so that, of course, you can then grant specific access and permissions to specific users so that not everybody is an admin inside of Portainer. And now we will have a look at a live demo. So as we already mentioned, we will concentrate here on the edgeConnector Siemens. And we have a central server component and then several virtual edge devices which are connected to the server. And the use case is basically to send data from PLCs to the data center, to your central data center, for instance, with some applications on it, in it when it's kind of an on-premise use case or when it's a cloud use case. You can also imagine to then forward the data to your corresponding cloud platform. And these edge devices have our edge agent, which enables then Portainer to manage this device and the corresponding applications. And our scenarios that we present are, first of all, an easy way to get started, because not everybody has the time to learn containerization and the corresponding technology. So when you want to start, Anthony will show you how you can easily start with just one instance and deploy the edgeConnector Siemens. And then we will show the so-called fleet management, so deployment of the edgeConnector Siemens on 100 devices. And then as the last step, also the deployment of the edgeConnector Siemens using our so-called one-touch onboarding process. And that's everything from my side. And I hand over to the live demo to Anthony.
Perfect. Thank you, Tobias. All right, let's have a look at Portainer then. The first thing that you should know is that you can download and install Portainer anywhere inside your infrastructure and connect it to thousands of devices. Once you have deployed and installed Portainer, you'll be able to access it through the internet navigator of your choice to be able to manage your devices. So if we look at our screen right here, this is my Portainer instance. For the first part of this demonstration, as Tobias explained, I'm going to show you how you can easily deploy the edgeConnector Siemens for softing on a specific device, and then we'll look at deployment at scale afterwards. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to log in with a specific maintenance user to my Portainer instance. This user only has access to a single device. This is done through the role-based access control rules that are available inside Portainer that you can use to manage accesses to your devices to different teams and users. Now that I'm logged in inside the Portainer software, I'm going to try to establish a connection to my device so that I can actually manage it. So right now we're just creating a connection to the device. Once we're connected, we get access to all the resources available on our device, which is pretty handy when we need to troubleshoot anything wrong with our applications or the status of our running applications. But what we're going to focus on right now is the app templates. App templates are basically an application catalog that Portainer provides inside the Portainer software. All these applications are pre-configured by us to make sure that they are super easy to deploy. So again, for a case here, we're going to have a look at our Edge app templates, and we can see that we have a few options available. We can see different edgeConnector from softing, and what we're going to do here is take care of deploying the edgeConnector Siemens by just clicking on that specific application item, giving it a name, edgeConnector, and just clicking on deploy the container. After that, we can see that the container has been deployed. We can see the status of the container. It's currently running, and we can see a bit more details about the container itself, the software itself. Just to validate that it is working properly, we're going to access the management UI of the edgeConnector, which is exposed over HTTPS. Just going to trust that self-signed certificate, and we're going to log in into the management UI for that specific instance. And as we can see here, our edgeConnector Siemens is running, and we've been able to access it fairly easily. So this use case is very good if you want to give a try to some specific software that you want to try out in an easy fashion or fast way on specific devices. Now we're going to look at the production side of things, where you want to actually automate the deployment of that edgeConnector Siemens software, for example, on hundreds of devices. To do so, I'm going to log out of that specific user account and log in as an administrator. So as you can see here, the view is a bit different. As an administrator, I have access to all the devices that are registered inside Portainer. And we're going to use the edge compute features here to deploy our software at scale. First thing that we need to do is to create a group. So-called edge groups is a logical unit that can type one or more devices inside the same group so that we can apply and batch deploy software on it afterwards. So let's create our edgeConnector group here, and we're going to use the dynamic capability of the edge groups to automatically assign all the devices that have the edgeConnector tag to that group. So as we can see here, we have a few devices available and associated with that tag. So we're just going to create our group. And we see our group is being created, and we can see that there are hundreds of devices associated with this specific group. Our next step will be to actually choose the software that we want to deploy on this group. And this is done through edge stacks. So we're going to go to edge stack, add a new stack. Same as before, I want to add this is going to be about deploying the edgeConnector at scale. So we're just going to call it edgeConnector. It as is. We're going to select one or more group here. We're just going to select the group that we've created before. So our goal is to deploy the edgeConnector Siemens software on that specific group. And you can either define yourself the definition of the stack if you know how to use Docker format, but we also support a list of pre-configured application through our templates available here. So we have a few available, and again, we have the softing edgeConnector Siemens template that we're going to use here. So we're going to select that. We're going to keep the default configuration here and simply deploy the stack. That created the instruction that Portainer will actually send to all the devices and say, right, this is the software that I want to deploy on these hundreds of devices. Please make sure that this is going to happen. So as you can see, we have a total of deployment here of hundreds. And if we refresh a bit, we can see that all the devices have actually received the instruction to deploy, and that most of them already deployed the software. If we refresh a bit, now the software has been deployed on the hundreds of devices. Just to validate that, I'm going to quickly establish a connection to one of these devices, and we're going to inspect the device and the software that is currently running on this device to make sure that our edgeConnector Siemens is actually deployed. So we've been connected to the device. If we have a look at the containers, we can see that the edgeConnector Siemens is actually deployed right over there. So this gives you an easy way to also batch deploy or deploy the software at scale on many devices. Now let's take the example of you already have your infrastructure here. We have hundreds of devices, they're all running. We've used Portainer to deploy our software at scale on all of them. That's very nice. But let's say that you have one or more new industrial PCs that you want to bring in, and you also want that software being deployed on these devices. So you can use our one-touch onboarding feature to achieve this. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go into the environment side of Portainer and look at the auto onboarding script. So this feature allows you to generate instructions that you can reuse against any devices to onboard them inside Portainer with specific configuration. We're going to keep the default configuration over there. What we want to set is that any device that is using this instruction should have the edgeConnector tag automatically added to them. And finally, we need some kind of unique identifier for the device. Here, we're just going to reuse the hostname of the machine. This allowed me to get instructions that I can actually execute on the container orchestrator of my choice. So if you have Kubernetes, you could use that on Kubernetes, Swarm, standalone, and Nomad. We're going to use the Docker standalone version here. We're just going to copy these instructions. Next step will be to go on our device and basically execute that command. This will automatically deploy the Portainer edge agent on the device, which will start then communicating with our Portainer server. So if we go back to Portainer now, we can go into the waiting room here, which is basically a temporary room where devices are starting to reach out to Portainer, and we can actually say, this device, I want to onboard it inside Portainer to be able to use it. So this is our device, which is going to associate it now. Now this device is fully onboarded inside Portainer, and if we have a look at our edge groups again, we can see that the environment count here went from 100 to 101. So that device has been automatically added in our edge group. And if we look at our edge stacks, that device has also been automatically linked to our stack, which means that the software has been, the operation to deploy the software has been received by the new device, and it already deployed the software. So if we look directly on the machine itself, at the running containers, we can see that our edgeConnector Siemens is already running on the machine. But this gives you an easy way now to reuse the same script across multiple new devices that you want to onboard to make sure that they're running the same workload, same version of the application, and so that you can maintain that from a central control point. And that will conclude my demo.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Anthony, for the demo. Now let me see what we got in terms of questions. Edward here is asking, I saw Ubuntu on the list. Is this platform Windows, Mac, and Linux capable?
So it's basically, so Edward is, guess, referring to the app template list, right? So we can have a look at it now. So Anthony, feel free to just open one app template list, right? And there's Ubuntu. So when you click on it, right, so then we can also deploy it. And do you know, Anthony, the capability? So is it, or does it support Windows, Mac, and Linux?
Portainer itself can be deployed anywhere. It's not really a problem. And the containerized software, it depends on how it has been built. Assuming your software can be built on any infrastructure or run on any infrastructure, then it can be deployed on it. So that Ubuntu template, for example, is a multi-architecture software, so it should be able to run on different platforms, yes.
Perfect.
Great. We got a question from Matthias Ollion. Can we import our own OPC-UA model in Softing?
Well, that's maybe one for me. Probably that can mean a few different things. If I understand the question correctly, I assume it means you deploy an OPC information model on edge level. You want to map a data source into that model so that, for example, machines from different vendors can be mapped into the same model and then look the same to the application. So that's, if that's the question, that's a feature that is currently available in the Windows application that we have. And we plan to release that also as a feature in a future version for our containerized products, information model mapping. Yeah, that's one of the examples. I like the question, if I understand it correctly, because it's one of the examples where, let's say, central management of an edge level becomes relevant. Yeah, central government for information models you want to roll out across multiple locations to make them look the same in some sense as an abstract layer. It's indeed one of the use cases that we see here. Today, it's not supported. As said, it will come in the containerized products in the future.
Well, which brought up then the follow-up question from Matthias Ollion. Okay, thank you. Do you have a due date?
I'm not the product manager.
Well, I guess we can get back to that.
No, I don't want to commit to a date here. We started to work on it, I can say that, but it's a bit unclear with which feature set we want to go. Let's say release maybe first version. I can offer. I mean, it's an interesting feature, and we are engaged with a few customers as stakeholders. I can offer to follow up on that question, because from my side, the follow-up question would be, how do you want to configure it? That's now from our perspective an interesting one. Mapping a few tags into an information model is one thing. You could do that with a nice GUI, but when you have brownfield old PLC 10,000 tags, how do you proceed? And understanding a bit better here, customer requirements, ideas, how to work with that in real world scenarios would be an interesting discussion. So maybe we can follow up on that.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Christopher. I got a question from Robert Ma saying, well, very open system, but what is the security structure?
Yeah, so I think, Robert, you're referring to Portainer, right? So I can elaborate on this. So basically, there are several aspects and several layers, right, when it comes to security and Portainer itself. So three main aspects are here important. So first of all, of course, the role-based access management that we presented, right? So that not everybody can operate on every device. There are different roles also, like read-only roles, etc. Then there's the special, as a second aspect, the special communication pattern between the agents, the edge agents that are running on the different edge devices, and then the central server component that you can see here. And it's basically always the case that the edge agent is initiating the communication towards the server and not the other way around. This is very important because you always, in our large customers, of course, want to initiate the communication from the OT network to the IT network, and not the other way around, which is very important. And the last aspect is also that you can secure this communication flow between, or the communication itself between the server and all the agents with mutual tiers.
Thanks, Tobias. Got a nice question here from Peter Pasikci. I hope I pronounced that right. What is the most common use case? When does a customer decide to turn away from traditional solutions and deploy containerized solutions?
Should I begin, or Tobias, do you want to start?
Feel free to start, Christopher.
From our perspective, we are the specialist for machine connectivity. What we have seen is that we had quite a few discussions, including big automotive OEMs in Germany, where early in the pre-sale cycle, the customers was looking at all three product variants that we can offer. Maybe there was one location where people said, oh, we don't have IT skills, give us hardware. A second location where people said, oh, we already manage an edge IPC with Windows. Can we get the Windows application? And the central IT team that was joining the party said, oh, we like containers. We have tools in place. Let's go for containers. Basically, all new customers, we had the discussions about that, in the end decided on containers, probably for various reasons. So I would say, as soon as we talk about that solution context that I try to describe here, a cloud platform or a central platform, multiple applications, there's a clear tendency to go for containers. We have some customers who also work with our traditional products in innovative scenarios. I would say those are usually customers who use our products already since quite a while, may have a large installed base for data feed or PC suite, and technically, of course, you can use also the other products to connect the cloud platform. So if there's, let's say, a softening history using the other products, there may be a case to continue to use them. But for new innovative solution scenarios, it's usually at the end a discussion for containers. Tobias.
Yeah, very nice summary. So basically, one major aspect that we also identified when talking to our customers is that, of course, this a comprehensive IIoT project consists of several components, right? So, for instance, machine connectivity, but also MES software, etc., etc. And sometimes, because of the advantages of containerized applications, the software suppliers of specific components, a component just offers the newest updates, etc., as a container. So it's sometimes also this external impact that some software suppliers just offer their newest versions as a container, and then the customer is also forced sometimes, right, to adopt towards container technology.
If I may add maybe one more, or Ramin, do we have more questions we want to cover?
No, I think it's a nice question
so
to expand on.
It's a really good question, I think. So if I may add one more comment, I'd probably say the answer shouldn't be driven by looking at machine connectivity alone. So I think the key question for the customer is there a case to use container software virtualization, container technology on edge level? Not only for machine connectivity, but for other software functions as well. You may want to apply in future solution scenarios, AI, machine learning on edge level, and so on. So we fully understand that for some customers, there's sort of an entry-level barrier to learn the technology, maybe to think about an organization that can manage it. Doing it only for machine connectivity, maybe a question mark indeed, but as soon as customers start thinking about innovative solution architectures for edge in general, there should be a case to look at containerized architectures. And if a customer has reached that point, then there should be a clear case also to handle, also to use machine connectivity as containerized software modules.
All right, great. I don't see any more questions coming in. I mean, the last one was a very nice one to expand on. So I want to say thank you to the attendees, and obviously thank you, Tobias, thank you, Anthony, and also thank you, Christopher. If there are any other questions which might pop up once you receive the presentation or the recording, reach out to us. We're there to assist you. And I would look forward to welcoming you in one of our future webinars. And I wish you a nice rest of the week. Bye-bye.